to Under the Bonnet, and this week we're joined by Patrick Bryan, who preached on Sunday. Patrick, lovely to have you here, looking at Hebrews 12. So good to see your sport. I don't think any preachers previously brought out their unwashed sport kit, two sports kits on the stage before.
I think it's
particularly nice.
It should be done more often, I feel. Actually, somebody did say afterwards, love the visuals, so you can have that, Andy.
Not just visuals, though, it's my point. For those who were there, they could smell it as well. Anyway, look, we're in. So we finished that lovely chapter of Hebrews 11, and we're into chapter 12. We're nearing the end of Hebrews, and I'm going to ask Fiona to read. We're going to look at Hebrews chapter 12, 1 to 13. You might want to follow along in your Bible, and then we're just going to discuss it. Fiona.
Thank you. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you've not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten the word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as a son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? And if you're not disciplined, and everyone does undergo discipline, then you're not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees, make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed."
Thank you very much. Now, I mean, classically, verses 1 to 3 are glorious. I mean, what a wonderful passage you were given. And verses 4 to 13 are really very difficult. So, you had both the easy and the difficult. Let's focus, I thought, first of all, on 1 to 3. And this is where your kind of sports kit analogy comes in, isn't it? That we are to endure, we're to persevere. And I thought you very helpfully mentioned there that obviously that's in the long term, so big picture, I have to be aware of that. But if at the beginning of did you really run 13 miles? You ran a half marathon?
Well, last Wednesday, yeah.
Wow. So if you start out on a half marathon thinking all the time about the end, it demoralises you. So you just focused a little bit at the time.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I think that whole area of sort of fixing our eyes on Jesus, I think, as I said on Sunday, it gets used as a look at the end point. So, I've heard it said, some people say, life on earth is not very good, but at least we've got heaven to look forward to. And I would argue that's actually not good news. And this is where, I brought out the fixing our eyes on Jesus. We look at what Jesus said at the start of his ministry in Luke chapter 4. It's good news for the poor. It's good news for the prisoner. This is in the here and now. He's not saying my ministry comes so that there'll be good news ultimately for the poor, ultimately for the prisoner. That's true, but it has to be in the here and now. And so this fixing our eyes on Jesus has to be in the here and now, as much as in the future. If you lose sight of the future, you could be fixing your eyes on something, but actually, when it comes to the end, you could end up off. So, if I don't have my eyes with a clear idea of where I'm going, so, I go for a 13-mile run, if I don't have a clear idea where my end point is going to be, I can find myself in Harborough when I wanted to find myself back at my front door.
Yes.
So you can't take your eyes off the ultimate goal, but in the midst of that, I want to be focusing. So in this this run of faith, I want to be focusing on Jesus in each section of it, because that is what I guess keeps my eyes focused on Him. We've got here, it brings us to the cross, but it brings us to the relationships with God. It brings us to how we transform our relationships with one another. It brings us to an understanding of what life is. So that, I want that. So I need to be focused on that, but I also need to have that long view in place. So it's both the short and the long that you need in place, or else you'll miss the ultimate goal if you're only focusing like on each step, and you'll suddenly find yourself going off. And I say it sort of puts me at the middle of that. I don't mean to put me at the middle of that, but what God is calling us to.
So that's really what I want to ask you to really is, what does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis? So Fiona, what does it look like for you to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus day to day?
Well, I think for me, it is a really big encouragement that I'm going to heaven and that all this rubbish will be gone one day. I think that's a really significant thing.
So let me just butt into that. That's something you remind yourself of daily.
Whenever there's rubbish, which is quite often. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when there's good things,
Yes.
thinking actually this is just a shadow
Love
of
it.
what's coming. But I think also probably just talking to the Lord, or trying to, rather than talking to myself and grumbling, because I tend to talk to myself and it's quite negative when rubbish things happen, trying to turn that into talking to the Lord or being aware of Him with me all the time, as you said. He's not just at the finishing line like a kind of parent at a school race going, come on.
Yeah.
He's actually is with us. He is the God who is with us as well, because this is one truth about the Christian life, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not everything.
Exactly. So I think just that practical reminder, and I think we'll come on to this, but I think suffering can really sharpen the focus. I think the hardest thing is when everything's great and easy. That's when you can lose your focus, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think also to butt in, there's an element of fixing our eyes. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus.
Yeah,
So what are we doing corporately? So when we come together on a Sunday or in home groups, or when you're going around and meeting with people, are we encouraging one another in the everyday life? That's part of fixing our eyes on Jesus. So it's not just what I do is important, but also what we do together as a community, or what we may do with other communities. So, for example, you've been down Open Hands today. Well, what does going down Open Hands today, how does that help you fix your eyes on Jesus?
Well, I visited their new centre today, which was glorious. I saw some people there who, because they love Jesus, are serving and working very, very hard, and that encourages me. I have a chat with my friend David Hines, and we talk a little bit about what's going on in our lives. We encourage one another. I see the way that faith is being worked out in practice. So it's not just people, reading their Bibles and God bless you and hope you keep warm. They are helping us keep warm. They're gonna. What are they going to do? They're going to feed people. They're going to clothe people. They're going to teach people. They're going to love people. It's just very exciting.
But I think also, so that's great. Thank you. Also, there is that element. It's again, it's easy. Look, I stand at the front on a Sunday and say, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. And we sit here at 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and we can say that. But I'm aware there are people who probably still got another hour of work to go at their workplace. They've had maybe kids at home. They've got illnesses. They've got there are for many of us. This is not an easy thing, and I think this is where you need the encouragement of other people, but also just that sense of, are there even just little things that can just focus our eyes away from ourselves and onto Jesus? So this is not necessarily always going to be a really big thing, because Jesus meets with us in the reality of the everyday life that we find ourselves in. And so I think it's that sense of allowing one another to encourage us, but also allowing God to encourage us right in the middle of where we find ourselves. At the end of a year 9 class or something like that.
So how's that happened for you today?
So today, I think it would be. I'm trying to think what I've done. So I had to get my tyres changed today on the car. So I've went down. So I've got my tenses wrong. I've gone down to North Evington to get the tyres changed. Just great to be in a place where you've got a lot of people from different backgrounds just walking past, and then just praying for them, praying for that area, just that sense of asking God to be working in that particular area as my tyres are being changed.
Good.
And I think there's a sense in these verses that this is a discipline, isn't it? This isn't something that just comes naturally. It's something we learn to do, something we need to challenge each other to do.
But it's a dirty word, that, isn't it?
Discipline.
Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about discipline.
But it's weird, isn't it? Because there's no way Patrick would be running. I mean, I couldn't even think about it. I could cycle that, but I couldn't run 30 miles.
Oh, you're doing yourself down.
No, I'm not. There's no way you could achieve that without some discipline, is there? So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that there needs to be some discipline in our Christian lives. It's not just kind of floating around.
Yeah, I think that. No, but I do think it's become a dirty
yes,
word.
It has.
Shouldn't do.
Yeah.
But I think actually, Patrick, you're a really bad example of this, because when you run, you're a lone wolf.
That is true.
And quite scary. When he's running towards you in the park, downhill, you get out the way.
You do.
You get run over.
Because he's a rugby player, as he may call, but he's also a runner. Combine the two, and you've got trouble. But for me, and I know for you as well, Fiona, that when we run, one of the crucial things is running with other people.
Yeah.
Because they urge us and inspire us on.
Yeah.
Well, the same's true in the Christian life, and I'm pleased to say you do it really well in the Christian life. But we do urge and inspire one another on. That's the whole point of, as you say, Sundays. I'm encouraged. I come away from that encouraged. Singing.
I mean, like Sunday night, the 7 o'clock on Sunday night, it was fantastic to sing with all those people, those fantastic songs. I mean, that just refreshes us, doesn't it? And you go, oh yes, I believe this. I'm full of joy about this, which you don't just reading the words on your own.
That's right.
Let me just, one final thing here is I love verse 2, fixing our eyes on Jesus, right? We talked about that. But who is he? The pioneer and perfecter of faith. So actually, as I look, I seem to be doing Mark everywhere, home group, Sunday nights, Tigers, and then we're doing the staff team. And I've loved just looking at the Lord Jesus Christ and seeing the way that he lives and the way that he negotiates the kind of the grot and the difficulty of this life and so on. He's our pioneer and perfecter, isn't he? And so we can follow him, and he guides us through.
Is that all you want to say on that?
Yes,
I think that's true. Before we move on to verses 4 and following, I want to just touch on following on from that. For the joy that was set before him, he journeyed across, scorning its shame. And just touch on this idea of shame, because this is often something for us in the West, in the UK, that we often don't touch on, because it is not as relevant for us as that sense of being guilty. We live in a society which is rules-based, which focuses on following the rules. And I think the Bible, though, is written within an Eastern worldview. And so that's not to say that the rules-based idea of sin and the need for a punishment for sin is not relevant. It is. But I think what I always hope to say is there's more. So not only have your sins been paid for, by Jesus, brilliant, but I've got more for you. I've got the shame that is taken away. Now this whole idea of shame and honour, I'm looking up a little bit more on this. I think if you think of it from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were there, honoured by God, no shame. And then the fall comes, and that's when the shame comes in. And that's the sense of the broken relationship. And so it's a relational thing. Relationships were broken between God and them and between each other. And so that shame is that sense of your position, your place within a society, within a community, is taken away from you. And actually, so Jesus being crucified endured the shame. He was broken off from people. Imagine his family, his mother who was there at the cross, people looking on. She would have been shamed. Her son was being crucified. But because he was perfect, because he is God, he comes back to life and defeats that shame. And so, I think this is not going to work for everybody who's listening here, but explore a little bit more about to have your shame taken away. Or if you're talking with somebody who is from an Eastern, an Asian worldview, a Muslim, shame is going to be a real issue for them. So Jesus comes, salvation for them. They need that shame dealt with. And so this is saying there is more to the cross than simply the forgiveness of sins.
It's not just your sins.
It's not just tick that off.
Yeah.
It's greater than that.
Yes. So I'm really interested in this because obviously you spent a lot of your life amongst Eastern peoples, and classically we go, yes, with the East it's shame and with the West it's guilt, and there's some truth to it, but it's not all truth.
No, it's not. So there's
a lot of shame here.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken a few quotes down here. So when social reputation is the basic foundation of life and identity. Social reputation. So think of Insta, think of Facebook, think of how many followers you have. Okay, if that is the basic foundation of life and identity, people's pursuit of respect, honor, and status frames every facet of life. So if you lose respect, honor and status, the basic foundation of your standing within society is gone. Now, you may well have not done anything wrong. You may have broken maybe you put the wrong filter on at Insta, and shame on the wrong filter. Well, I mean, that's maybe but that's the sort of the idea, and that sense of isolation from the community. But Jesus is actually saying you are no longer isolated. That shame, that isolation, that lack of honor that you have, that is going to. I can bring that back to you. And so it's that sense of wanting to bring honor to people, and perhaps maybe scorning its shame. Well, I guess it then just sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, the place of ultimate honor. I sort of tried to make this point. You've gone from ultimate shame to ultimate honor. And that's a beautiful. You are honourable. You are freed from the penalty of sin. You are freed from fear. That's what the cross is. It's all of these things. And in any given context, you will focus on one more than another. And that's
but
reality.
I do think the shame issue is particularly big and particularly relevant. Where things like pornography and sexual sins are concerned. In our church family, I think there's shame, and I think this is really relevant for that.
So Jesus speaks into that,
and
there's the real excitement, that the cross is there for that as well.
Anything? Want to cover anything else?
Well, I guess what strikes me is again, what Hebrews is about is that these guys are being tempted to grow weary and lose heart, and so basically it's the keep on going, guys. That's basically one of the big things.
That's right,
Hebrews, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's very much the whole letter to the Hebrews is written as a means of encouragement. We've been talking about the benefits that we have as followers of Jesus. So there are many times that you said, look through this passage and look at the benefits of what it is, to be a child of God. Or all that, and it's all with the aim of not losing heart. So it's a letter of encouragement. It's a letter of keeping going. It's a letter of saying, even in the midst of all the nonsense that's going on, keep going, persevere.
But I love that because it's very realistic.
It's very real. Yeah, because you do always want to give up.
We will want to give up.
Yeah,
and that so it almost says expect that you will feel like this, but don't. Which I think is really good.
All right, we need to move on. verses 4 to 13 talk about the discipline of God. We've been talking about this beforehand, and just very aware that people have different views on this, and we won't be aware actually of all those views. And this may just start a conversation, which is great. And maybe you want to bring the conversation in here, so feel free to email one of us, and we'll happily just come back to this in a future Under the Bonnet. So if we missed anything, let us know. But let's just think about that discipline idea, because it's difficult, isn't it? What does that look like? Because it feels a little bit like, to me, I'm wandering through life, I get walloped in some way, okay, and I'm kind of, whoa, that was a bit difficult, and now I get another wallop because, and by the way, that's because God wants to discipline you. So now I get this kind of double wallop. Is that what it means? Help us with that. I'm hoping not.
I hope not. And I think, first of all, Andy, I think you're right. I think this is a very difficult and tricky topic. And so, I brought it up on Sunday because it's there. But if I made light of it in any way, I want to apologise for that. That is not what I want to do. And I think in discussing it here, we don't want to... I acknowledge that for a lot of people, this is going to be this is a very difficult and a very real situation. I guess the first of all thing that I think we want to acknowledge is that God as a father, his fathering of us is perfect because he is God. So we talk about, do not make light of the Lord's discipline. The discipline that we're talking about here is a discipline that, that builds, that humanizes, that doesn't destroy. Now, do I believe that God is sort of the author of bad stuff that happens? I don't. We can discuss this. Do I believe that God is the God of love and has given us all free will? Yes, I do. So I guess the flip side of that is that there is evil and there is bad stuff in the world. We see from the fall, we see the fracturing of the relationship between humanity and the created order. We see a lot of the issues that we see within the environment now are a part of that. I guess I mentioned my mum having cancer. Well, look, cancer's not good. God did not make people so that they could have cancer. That's not the purpose. It is a sign of something that is broken. But do I believe that God broke that? I don't. But do I believe that God can use that? Yes, I do. So my sort of understanding of what it says, the Lord's discipline would be to put or endure hardship as discipline, is where possible, to put the difficulties that we have, first of all, acknowledging that it's rubbish. Verse 11, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. I asked a question at the 10:30, which was, who likes discipline? And
did anyone put their hands up?
Yeah, a handful did.
Okay.
And I was, and I think there was an element whereby, well, you like discipline because it is going to be for your good. Does that make sense? So you'll go, no pain, no gain. Why do I go down the gym?
Yeah.
I go down the gym, so I push those heavy weights, which are going to hurt me, but I love that hurt because I know the good that it's going to come. But most people are not like that. Most people go, do you know what? I don't really like the pain.
Yeah.
No.
But so I think it's important to say something is rubbish. Something is not. This is not right. And that's the psalmists do that. They go, Lord, this is not right. But actually, by coming to God, talks in verse 11, isn't it? Produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. It puts the hardship within a God's sort of worldview, within a sort of a way of viewing it through God's meta narrative of how He is, working all things together for the good of those who love Him.
It gives meaning and purpose to it.
I think that
it brings something good out of it.
Yeah, and it is in and of itself, it is not good.
Well, it says it doesn't seem pleasant at the time, but painful.
Yeah.
So it's not saying be happy.
No, that's right. So I think you don't, when
the end result.
exactly.
So,
sorry.
Well, I just want to ground this a little bit with that example at the beginning. So something bad has happened, and you're saying, Patrick, that I'm allowed to go, Lord, this is rubbish. I hate this, and that's right, because this is a broken world and so on. What do I then do? How do I, verse 7, endure hardship as discipline?
I think we have to be quite careful here, and I guess some of us might be tempted to do this. This is for me to work out myself. So I can't look at trouble that Patrick's going through and going, oh, well, God's clearly teaching him to get his act together. That is not what we're meant to be doing. So I think we need to be really careful about that and trying to second guess God, because we can't see the end from the beginning. But I think practically...
So you can't see it in his life?
No, but in my life, I think, and I don't always do this because I hate it when bad things happen, but I personally think there needs to be a sense of, Lord, are you teaching me something through this? It might not be that. It might just be, it's just bad, because God isn't always doing that. He's not always doing that. But I think we've got to ask the question. I read somewhere, are you teaching me to trust you more or love you more? Or I can't remember, but there were a series of questions. Is this blow designed to soften me, or help me to be more resilient, or help me to put Jesus first, or just to ask those questions, and maybe ask other people to see.
So right there is where I think we have the kind of there'll be disagreement, won't there? Because we'll have some people who go, no, Patrick, you're wrong. God actually gives people hard. He deliberately brings hard stuff into their lives. There'll be other people going, no, you were right. We live in a fallen world, but he allows it. At the very least, he allows it. And then other people will be going, it's none of those things. It's just this is quite random and so on. In a sense, one thing that connects them is you can do what you've just said, which is, Lord, however this happened, what can I learn through this? Yeah. Where's the how can I? How can this produce a harvest of righteousness and peace? How can this train me?
Is it helping me to be more patient? Generally, suffering is a challenge to our patience, isn't it? Yes. Generally, is it helping me to be more gentle with people, because I realise what I've gone through is hard, and I want to be more gentle with other people. I don't know, growing my faith. I think God can use the most appalling things to bring about a bigger good. But I don't think, like Patrick said, I don't think God goes, oh goody, I'm going to give such and such cancer. Because
the Father doesn't do that, right?
I think the illustration is really helpful, because he could have used a school illustration, couldn't he? He could have said, headmaster, you've been bad, you're going to get walloped. But he doesn't. He uses a father, and a good father hates to discipline a child, don't they? I mean, it pains a good father to, sit the kid on the naughty step or stop them having their computer or whatever. But they're doing it because they want better for their child. And I think God isn't mean. He wants us being holy is the better thing, and he's prepared to allow us to suffer because he's got a better. Just as you were prepared to allow your kids to miss out on the computer or the telly or whatever when they were naughty, because you wanted a better future. You didn't enjoy doing that, but you did it because you loved them. And I think that's the difficulty. In my mind, sometimes God gets twisted into a kind of mean, he's kind of got the big stick out.
Well, Patrick's saying about an abusive father, he's not that, we can say that.
No, and I think, he makes that really clear, isn't it? they disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good. And also his discipline shows us that we are his children. So we are his very beloved children, and that's why he cares about what happens to us. If he didn't, if we weren't his children and he didn't care, then that would be terrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's hard to see suffering as love, just as, I guess, your kids.
Yeah.
When you're disciplining them, it doesn't feel like you're being a very loving father, does it?
Yes. I mean, I think with all this, I think I would say, so I think you're right. I think you cannot see in somebody else, or you cannot say to somebody else what God is doing through this. It's God's discipline. It's for God to say what he wants to say. I would also say, I don't think you don't want to be rushing this either.
No.
You don't want to be so let you get walloped. You don't want to be suddenly. I would say you don't want to suddenly go, okay, God, what are you teaching me through this?
Yeah.
Because that's unrealistic, and
it's
so
years, isn't
exactly.
it?
So you say, what could somebody else do? Well, oftentimes people just want people just to sit with them. Just to, unlike Job's comforters, just to sit and go, this is not good, but then it's putting it within, that there's the hope that something good will come from this. So you think about the cross, the shame into the honour. So you have to think, look, this is not a good thing that's happening, but I believe that something good will come from this, because ultimately, following Jesus is a journey of hope. And allowing God to change us and to mould us is got to be a journey of hope rather than despair. It is not going to be easy.
He says it's not going to be pleasant. I think one of the key things, one of the hardest things in verse 9, how much more should we submit to the Father of our spirits and live? So he wants us to live. He wants to give us life. But when we suffer, it feels like we're being destroyed and taken apart. And then naturally, I know I do this, I shake my fists at him and go, get off, God, leave me alone, go and pick on someone else. And that's not very submissive. Whereas what I should be doing is saying, Lord, I know you love me. I have no idea what's going on here, but help me to keep trusting that you love me. Help me to submit to whatever it is you're teaching me, rather than... Because that's a humble thing, isn't it? Because I think maybe sometimes we think we don't need discipline because we think we're a lot better than we are. And so we're like, how dare you, God?
I suppose one of the things we verse 7, endure hardship, and the point is hardship. There's a scale there, right? Isn't there? So you're absolutely correct that on this level, at this extreme end. There could be that horrific sort of thing that happens that leaves you shocked, stunned for days, for weeks, maybe months, maybe years. And then right down here, there's the kind of the much smaller thing, the something that just really
the puncture or
but it's really inconvenient for a few hours, right? We got the whole gamut. And if you're here, of course, it's good. This will take time to work. If you're here, you may. I mean, I've had at this end, precisely that. You have a puncture, and you're going. I'm going, and I go, oh no, hang on, Lord, maybe you are putting your finger on my patience.
No, but I mean, I think when you think of hardship, there's a great quote, if I can read it in here, from Amy or Ewing. Where is it? Here it is. And this talks about people who've undergone hardship and trauma, and that actually trauma makes us one better and less productive because you're having to deal with stuff. You don't have the same capacity. And what she sort of talks about is, in our society, we actually value productivity.
Yes.
We value people who can do. She says here, often we are valued by our capacity to buy, to produce, to achieve, and to think rationally. Then when I'm less effective, less productive, less rational due to having been traumatized, I'm not just impaired as a person, but my very value as a human being is under threat, as is the point of my life, and that is deeply damaging. The Christian view of human beings as sacred image bearers implies that the violation of that image is going to mean more than the brute fact of an event that you can get over quickly. And there's that sense, I think, that says, and this is where sort of God's role comes into it. He says, I'm going to shape you, but it's not about therefore creating you to be more productive or whatever. I'm going to use this situation that you've been through to shape you into how I want to shape you. And actually your value to me is no less and no more than it was before this hardship has happened. You are still my child, you're still my son, my daughter, and I'm shaping you and I'm changing you. And it's not about productivity and it's not about being able to do, but it's about being his child. And I think that's what this whole area of discipline
and that's
is.
exactly what verse 11 says, the harvest of righteousness and peace.
Yeah.
It's character, it's not kind of productivity.
Yeah.
It's invisible things like patience and kindness and love and joy. So yeah, it's making us more like Jesus, isn't it, rather than making us more useful or productive.
Yeah.
And you can't see that, can you? Can't see that happening.
No.
But you can see, I can see it in other people looking back. I can see people in our church family over 20 years, how they have changed to become more like Jesus through incredibly hard things. And that's very lovely to see. So yeah, that's encouraging.
Anything else from this you want to throw?
I just wanted to say, just to mention the two dangers that struck me in verses 5 and 6, that when we do suffer, when God is disciplining us, the two dangers are that we will make light of it, that we will ignore it, that we will just go, oh, go away, God, leave me alone. Something hard comes along and we just don't want to know, or we just take it lightly. We don't consider, we don't think, we don't reflect. And then the other danger is that we will kind of just despair and lose heart. And I just thought it's quite useful to have those two things in front of us. Am I more in danger of ignoring and making light and just kind of, oh well, or am I in danger of just kind of being crushed and despairing? So
Thank you. Just help me with verse 13. What is that all about? So, he kind of summarizes at the end, verse 12, therefore strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet so that the lame may not be disabled but rather healed. Does anybody know what's going on there?
No, my get out of jail free card
you weren't preaching on that,
on this one was say I chose not to preach on that because actually that's now the segue into verses 14 and following.
So John Barrett,
Steve Borden.
Oh, is Steve Borden doing the next one? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let him know.
So that it was the chapter 11 through to 12:11 was sort of deemed to be one section, and then 12 and following is sort of the start of the next section.
Beautifully done.
So I chose not to look at that.
So over to Steve.
Guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Patrick, so much for preaching on Sunday. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this encouraging and helpful for you. Remember, if you do have some questions, write in, or it may be that this has kind of brought up something and you personally just want to discuss that through. Again, get in touch with us through the office, won't you? Next week we're not back because we're just taking a pause from Hebrews. We're having a look at open hands on Sunday, but we'll be back the following week, and I'm hoping to persuade Steve Borden to be here. Keep liking, keep subscribing, more videos coming your way very soon.